What's up guys, it's Paraly5er here, and today we're going to be ranking all of the ranged weapons in Grounded, as well as any of the other stuff that I've yet to rank. This tier list is as of 1.1 in Grounded. I had recorded it prior to this, but I decided to re-record for 1.1 since a lot of changes were made. As a lot of you know, I'm not a huge fan of the ranged weapons in the game, so you probably aren't going to like this tier list, but don't hate me. The first thing we have on the list is the Sour Staff. Now, pre 1.1, I would have put this at S tier. Now I'm going to put it in an A tier. The reason it's not as good as it was before 1.1 is because in 1.1, they changed the staffs a little bit so that when you shoot, there's now a little bit of a delay so that the game won't let you block instantly. There's a delay where you just can't do anything for a couple seconds after shooting, which I really don't like. It's really annoying, and it definitely nerfed the staffs a bit, so they're not as good as they were before. Then we have the Mint Staff. This one's also alright. The problem with this one is it doesn't have as much range. It only gets about maybe 5 foot in front of you. It can't really hit a mosquito flying above you. I'm going to put this in C tier because it just doesn't have the reach. You're trying to use it to fight mosquitoes and you just can't hit them because they're too high in the sky. Then we have the Spicy, which I'm going to put in B. I know a lot of people like to use this stuff in the Broodmother fight in order to kill the spiderlings and orb weavers that come in. Personally, I'm not as big a fan of it as the Sour. I really like the Sour because it's really, really good for killing the moths in the game. But the Spicy is still a decent staff, so I'm going to put it in B tier. The other problem with the Sour Staff, of course, is that when you do a charged attack, you actually end up hurting your teammates. Also, with the Mint Staff, of course, you can't do a charged attack with it. It just has one attack phase. So it's different to the other two. The other two can do singular and charged attacks. Next, we have the tier 1 bombs. I'm going to put these in a solid... I'll put these in like a B tier. They're pretty cool. You can use them to break cracked rocks. They don't really do much other than breaking cracked rocks. You can use them to farm clovers. You can use them to farm grass, dry grass, all these sorts of things. But you can't use them to farm husky weeds, of course, because those are tier 2. But they're pretty good if you want to farm a bunch of clovers, or if you're trying to break cracked rocks to get to certain areas of the map. The only problem is when you're crafting them, it takes a red ant egg per bomb. And it can be really difficult to get a lot of red ant eggs at once because each ant egg takes up a slot in your inventory. They don't stack. So it takes up a lot of inventory space, making them difficult to craft. Next, we have the Splat Burst. I'm going to put this in A tier. It is a tier 2 bomb. All you need to get it is to craft a Brat Burst with 5 web fiber and 5 sap, which makes it pretty expensive, but the upgrade is worth it. If you're not using any tier 2 tools, or for some reason you can't get tier 2 tools, you can use this instead, and it actually can break any tier 2 resource in the game, which is pretty useful if you're trying to farm weeds, or if you're trying to farm, like we said before, things like clovers. You can use it to farm any tier 2 or tier 1 resource, and it's not too much more expensive than the tier 1 bombs. Next, I'm actually going to rank the bomb arrows, just because they're also explosive. I actually think these are... I'm going to put them in S tier. You know, you're going to hate me for this, but they're easier to craft than the other bombs because you can stack the gunpowder in your inventory. Even though the gunpowder's a bit weird with how it respawns, you only need a bow to use them. They're not, like, difficult to use or anything. You can farm any resource in the game using these. The only resource you can't farm using the bomb arrows is pond moss. That is a fact. I'm pretty sure you can use these to harvest absolutely anything from clay to grass to weeds to burrs. They are amazing for farming resources in the game. They're relatively cheap in comparison to the other types of bombs because they don't require ant eggs. And you can't not love these things. The recipe's pretty easy to get as well. So I'm going to have to put these as an S tier item. But it's not because they're good at killing enemies. It's purely because they're good for farming resources in the game. Next, we have the repair tool. I guess this is like an A tier item. It's really easy to craft. It repairs stuff for you. It does a really good job of repairing stuff for you. Like, it repairs it pretty quickly. What more do you want me to say? And it repairs it for free. All you have to do is repair the repair tool, ironically, which is really cheap, so I guess it's an A tier item. Next, we have the Weevil Shield. I'm going to put this in C tier. Obviously, it's the worst shield. The thing I don't like about the Weevil Shield is you can only repair it using Weevil Meat. So certain areas of the map, like the haze and the upper yard, where you can't get Weevil meat very easily, it means it's very difficult to repair your Weevil shield, so this has to go in a C tier. The Black Ant Shield, I'm also going to put this in C tier. This thing costs 10 red ant parts and 5 black ant parts to craft. But to repair it, you need 4 black ant parts every single time. I don't know why it is so expensive. Personally, I think it should only cost 2 black ant parts to repair. It's mostly for that reason that it's going in C tier. Obviously, it doesn't have any other special effects either like the other shields do. I'm going to put the Fire Ant Shield in A tier. Again, this does cost 4 fire ant parts to repair, but fire ants are much easier to find. They're just all everywhere in the upper yard, so you can just fight them whenever you need to. This shield has a great effect when you perfect block attacks. It can lower the enemy's defense for a temporary amount of time, which is really, really good. And overall, this is just a great shield. The Ladybird shield is going to be a B tier for me. It's also a tier 3 shield, but I don't think it's as good as the Fire Ant shield. This one is to do with perfect blocking, and sometimes when you perfect block, you have a chance to get like a free block on an enemy or something like that. It's a bit of a weird effect that I don't really think is that good, to be honest. So for me, it's going to go in B tier. Now we're on to the bows. The Sprig bow. What do you want me to say about it? It's a tier 1 bow. I'm going to put it in C. You craft it using sprigs and other rubbish, and it's not very good. Insect bow, I'll put in a solid B tier. I think the insect bow it's obviously better than the sprig bow. They're different tiers. But it's very unique. I like the way it looks. It's got a very unique recipe with like spider fangs and stuff. Relatively difficult to get. The reason this is also pretty good is the fastest. I know the sprig is the same speed, but it's the best fast firing. So it's the best bow basically in the game, which is really good if you're trying to do like the mantis and you're using venom arrows to stack poison effects on the mantis. You're going to want to be using this bow because it's faster firing than the crossbows. I'm going to put the crow crossbow in B and the black ox in A. I'm not a huge fan of using bows or crossbows, as I've said many a time before. They are good. I use them to kill like bees. I use them to kill fireflies. And that's literally it. I don't really use bows for any other reason. I'll put the black ox crossbow in A because it's tier 3. And if you want to farm tier 3 resources using the bomb arrows, you do need a Black Ox crossbow. It's also relatively powerful, right? It's a tier 3 crossbow. The crow crossbow is good as well. Does cost crow feathers to craft, which is a little bit on the expensive side, but it's still a great item. I can't fault it. Regular arrows, I guess, are a B tier, right? Like, they're just regular arrows. There's nothing special about them. There's nothing bad about them. They're easy, cheap to craft, so you can't really fault them. Lure arrows, D tier. These things are useless. I don't understand why they're in the game. It's like the lure trap. All they do is lure enemies towards where you shoot them. I guess they can be like a good distraction tactic, but I don't like them. I'm not a fan. I'm going to put them in D tier. They're pretty cheap to craft. I think they just cost like flower petals, but not a fan. Next, these are gas arrows. I'm going to put these in A tier. These are pretty OP. They're very, very strong. They have a large area of effect. They gas the enemies. A little bit expensive to craft. I think they cost stinkbug gas sacks, but they're probably worth it, honestly. They're a solid A tier. Next, we have venom arrows. I'll put these in A tier as well. Little bit expensive to craft with the spider venom again. They're very, very good. They obviously inflict poison on your enemies. It's not a very strong poison, but if you're trying to do boss fights, you can stack loads of different types of poison, and this is one of the different types of poison you can stack. Feather arrows, I'm going to put in C, below regulars, just because they're so much more expensive to craft. It can be really hard to farm crow feathers. Like, there's no efficient way to farm them. You can learn the spawn points, but even then you have to wait for them to respawn and stuff. There's not an abundance of them on the map, so it's going to have to be a C tier for me. They can be really, really annoying to get a lot of crow arrows. Sour arrows are a D. They're good against one enemy, and that is Schmector. They are not good against any other enemy, and I wouldn't really recommend a bow against Schmector anyway. It's not really a good choice. So I'm going to have to put these in D, because sour, not many enemies are weak to it at all. These are the salt arrows. I do believe these are the salty arrows. I'm going to put these in B tier, I think. They're again, I don't really use the elemental arrows, but the reason they're B tier is because you can actually use these to fight the assistant manager, and they are decent because the assistant manager is weak to salty, and this is the only thing you can get salty before you fight the assistant manager, because you need to kill the assistant manager to get the chip, to get the flavored globs. So for that reason, it's going to be a B tier item. Next, we have the fresh arrows, or the mint arrows. I'm going to put these and the spicy ones in C tier. Not a huge fan of them. Don't use them much. They're one-time use, bit expensive to craft. I don't really like them, as I say. Plus, they cost crow feathers, which are also expensive. Next, we have the splinter arrows. I'm going to put these in C tier. They cost dust mite fuzz and splinters to craft, which is annoying to get. They have a really weird drop-off pattern where they drop really quickly. I'm not a fan of them at all. I know they probably do a lot more damage than the other arrow types, but I really don't like them. So for that reason, I'm going to have to put them in C tier. Next, we have the super venom arrows. I think these have to go in S. Same with the super stink. They're both, actually, no. Super venom's A because it costs super spider. Actually, no, it's B. They're really, really good, but they cost super spider venom to craft. And we all know how difficult it is to get super spider venom in this game. They did change the recipe though, I'm pretty sure. It was 1 arrow and 1 venom for 1 super venom arrow. But now I think you get 5 super venom arrows per 1 venom. So it's a bit better on the recipe. These super stink arrows are unbelievable. They're expensive to craft, but there's a few green shield bugs and they're guaranteed to drop you the stink sacks. And they're just really, really, really strong. They do a lot of damage over a large area. They're really, really, really good if you're using bows. Next, we have the decoy D tier. I don't need to finish the name of the item. Half of you might not even know the name of this item. It's supposed to attract large predators. I've never used it because I don't really need Jimmy Savile appearing in my grounded world. But if I was to use it, it would be pretty useless. If I wanted to fight a wolf spider, I'd go and fight a wolf spider. I don't throw some little bait on the ground to bait the wolf spider towards me. What a silly idea. D tier item. Already ranked the torches before, so that's the end of this tier list. Hopefully you don't disagree with my opinion too much. Obviously I didn't put as much in S tier as I have in other tier lists. That's mostly because I'm not a fan of most of these items. I mostly play melee, not range. So do, as always, take my opinion with a grain of salt. But I think I got it roughly right. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hopefully you don't hate me too much for this one. I will see you in the next grounded video. This is probably the last tier list I'm doing, so you might not see another one like this. But there's plenty more content on the way, and I'll see you in the next grounded video. Have a great rest of your day.